All right, so basically we're just looking at shapes now. So, okay, what shapes do we see? So we've got shapes like the walls are a cube that are scaled up and thinned out, you know. So I like to start with the perimeter. How big do we want our castle to be? Again, this is just an assignment where I want you to have fun, but I want it to look like a castle. And you know, this is just a reference to get us started. I may want to elaborate on this. I may want to make it bigger, which is fine, but I would not make it smaller. I really want you to put the time in to do this right. So it's going to take a lot of time. So make sure you start early. But we'll get you started, and you can make it as elaborate as you want. Have some fun with it. Now, we're not going to texture it, so don't worry about that. No texturing right now. We're just getting used to how to move objects around and get them on top of each other and make them look like a solid object. You know, so we see a beautiful piece at the very end, be something to be proud of, and you learned a little bit more on how to model, and I'll show you how to extrude and have some fun with that. You know, you can do the flags and everything you see here, and think about what primitives you're going to be using. So whenever I dissect an object that I want to recreate, whether it be a car or a TV set or a guitar, you have to think about all the primitives that you would use first before creating something from scratch. It's very time saving. Okay, so let's just use the grid that we have in the perspective view. I always want to keep the grid on in perspective view because that kind of gives us a good starting point. So with the grid, using the grid as a starting point, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about all the shapes that I need to have to create the larger shape. Okay, this looks really complicated, but if you break down all the basic shapes, it's not that bad. So a cylinder here, a wall here, or a cube that you extend to make it look like a wall. You have another cube here with other cubes on top. So just think about all the things. The only thing that is a little bit troublesome could be are trying to make the windows. Well, we'll get through that and we'll talk about that later. Okay? All right. So the first thing we want to do is I just want to start on a corner. Okay? I'll just call these corner spires. I'm sure there's a technical name for a castle. I have no idea. I'm not really going to dig into it that much, but it's kind of fun if you guys want to dig into it. Go for it, man. So I'm going to click in on a cylinder. So we'll start with the cylinder. Okay. So that's the basic shape that we're looking at. We want to make sure this is low poly, which that is low poly. It comes in as a low poly anyway, which is kind of nice. And then I'm just going to find a level playing field. So I'm going to go to the front view, the side view, because I didn't take the grid marks off here. So I'm going to move that up so it fits on top. Now you can see that if I want to move that up that perfectly, align that, you can go to click on in the channel editor, click on translate Y, which is up and down. That's the y-axis, and I'm going to type in 1 and hit enter, and that will perfectly place that object. I'm going to move that over to the side. I know I need a cube, so I'm going to do the same thing with a cube. So I'm going to click on a cube. So I kind of dissected this already and figured that it's basically cylinders, cubes, and we do have a cap on top. Okay, we have a little cap on the top here. So we can use a polygon cone. So I want to move that up, and you guessed it, we're going to move it up 1. Enter. There we go. Let's take a look from the side view. Now notice that it is not quite on that because it's not scaled up properly. So if I were to scale this up, hit the R key and then scale that up. Now notice that the cylinder is kind of eclipsing, or it looks like if you click off, it's hard to see the two. Okay. I can hit the wireframe like 4, And that goes into wireframe, lets me see the individual pieces. Then I can see that there's a cube in there, and I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to hit the 5 key again, back to shading. So 4 is wireframe, 5 is smooth shading, and I'm going to scale this up. Okay, and you can see that the scale right here is X, Y, and Z. If I click on that and move that down, hold down the left mouse button and let go and hit 2 and hit enter, it's going to give me a perfect scale of 2. Okay, and that's going to make it as big as that cylinder. So I'm going to move that over. I'm going to hit the W key, move it over. All right, so now we've got a little field here, that grid field. Okay, and we've got our objects perfectly on the grid. Okay, I can go to the front view, and you can see them separated. You can go to the side view. Okay, so that's why we have in the top view, so you can see on top. So using all 3 views will make it easier for you to find your way and place blocks on top of each other. So if I want to place the cube onto the cylinder, I really shouldn't be doing this, like lifting it up and placing it on top this way. And I'm thinking, okay, that looks like it's on top, right? Okay, let's see if I can get that as close as I can. Okay, and then I'm going to go, okay, that looks really good. But then I go to the side view, you notice that it's not on top of the object. So you have to go to the other viewports to see that it's sitting on top. Okay, and sometimes I use the wireframe, which is 4, the 4 key, to go back and forth so I can really see it. Okay, and I can zoom in by my middle mouse button, zooming in. And I can go in, and this is the whole idea about this exercise, is that you can put things perfectly on other objects. Okay, that's what I want you to practice. That's the whole idea. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to take this. I'm going to Control Z this back. Okay, right? Because we have it set up. If you move this, you can go in here and move it, and you can go and set it back to 1. Okay, that'll get you back. Okay, all right. So what we're doing now is just assessing the reference and the model that we want to create something here. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. All right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put this to this corner. Okay, now I'm going to go to the top view, okay, and just kind of assess and see where I've got it at, and that's pretty good. That's pretty close to where I want it. Okay, you can see we're at the edge there. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of model this part here. Okay, that's what I'm going to do right now, is just model that area right there. And the cylinder, for me to model this properly, I'm going to have to go in here, and I'm going to have to add an edge on the top for me to do what I want to do next. Okay, edge on the top, but I want to make it the scale, the size of it. So I'm going to go to the side view or the front view, and I'm going to right click over it and over the object, right click over the object and go to vertex, and I'm going to select the vertices and move them up. So I get the nice height of that corner piece. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to go back to select. So I'm right mouse button clicking over the object and go back to selection mode. Okay. Now you notice that pivot point's kind of off kilter. So I can go up here under poly modeling. That's the shelf. I can click on center pivot. That's what that means, center pivot. So I can center that pivot if I want to. Okay. That's kind of helpful if I want to rotate and scale and all that stuff. Okay. All right, so that's the first part. If I go into cylinder, you can see that I've got subdivision axes. That's 20 subdivisions around. Okay. The next thing I need to do is figure out, okay, so how do I make these little pieces on the top? Okay. You can see that it has all these little pieces on the top. So I could create little squares to place on top if I want to. But in this instance, I don't really want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to perspective, hit the F key to frame that. And I do want to keep this low poly, but I realize that to get the detail that I want, I'm going to have to bring this up to something like, let me try 40 and see what happens with that. And that you see how that destroyed the object, because I've got history on that, and when I scaled it and moved it and transformed it, it doesn't really like that. Okay, so you're going to find yourself having to go back and recreate this real quick, which is not a big deal, because it's just basically selecting the cylinder. Okay, and this is where we want to go ahead and move it out and get it closer here. And you can see that I can go in here and change the subdivisions from 20 to 40. Okay, like that. So I can have, so that looks like a little bit better. It's still low poly, it's still considered low poly. And I want to have subdivision caps to 3, something like 3. And that gives us 3 subdivision caps, which is good. Okay, all around. Anything we don't need, we can get rid of, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing I did before, where I'm going to move it up. Now that I got it set up the way I want to, I'm going to translate it in the Y to 1. Okay, and that should put it right on top, and it did. Okay, the other thing I need to do is to go to the side view. Okay, and I hit the 5 key, and I'm going to right click, go to vertex, and I'm going to move that up. Okay, like that. Get it to about the scale that I want. Don't worry, you don't have to be exact. Okay, in fact, it's good to experiment and have fun. This is just a reference. You can add or subtract. I really don't want you subtracting from it, but you can definitely add and make it more complex if you want to. Make it your own, that's fine. Just don't make it smaller than what we have here. Okay, and so from top view, I'm just going to get that set up in the corner again. And you can see that now we're ready to start adding detail to it. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Make sure you save your work. Save scene as, and we are going to call this castle start number 2, and then save as. There we go. Alright, so now we're able to go in here and start adding that detail we have on the top. Okay, so what we want to do is kind of select the faces. Okay, so basically what I just did here was I right mouse clicked over the object and went to face. So you're going to have to learn how to work with this. So right click over it, go to face, vertex, edge. So we're going to work with faces because we want to select the faces. I'm going to hit the Q key. Okay, and I'm going to, this is a little time consuming, but I'm going to select, shift select, and just kind of click a couple, and then click a couple, and then miss one, and click a couple, miss one, click a couple, miss one. Or you can click a couple like that, miss 2, click 2, miss 2, click 2, miss 2. That might work a little bit better because we're just modeling this from scratch, and since we have 40, it should come out okay. We have an even number, and it looks like we got a little bit of a gap there. That kind of stinks. So let's leave the gap. Let's add that like that. Oh, that has 40 in it. Yeah, that's divisions of 40, so that... Okay, let's try that again. Looks like it's okay. I'm just going to leave a big gap there. Control Z back. And I'm going to hold that Control key down to deselect something. So we'll have a little gap there. Or we can make one a little bit thicker if we want to. So I can add like that. And that might be something we can put in the back, right? Instead of the front. Okay. So Anyway, I'm going to go Control Z back. That kind of gives me what I had before. And I can always rotate to that to the back, so nobody really notices that much. Anyway, Control. So I'm going to do a Control E, which is extrude. Or you can go into your toolbox. Okay, that's what that is. Show Hide Modeling Toolkit. And we've got extrude here. Okay, you can click on that, extrude, if you want to do it that way, or the hotkey is Control E. That's what I usually use. Okay, but I want you to know you have your toolkit here. Okay, so that's nice to have. Anyway, Control E will do the same thing, and the arrow allows us to move it up. I can also hit the W key, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have you guys try to get used to this. So if I click on the arrow and move it up, then you can see that we are extruding those pieces there. Okay, like that. So we kind of get that same look. Now, let's go back, Control Z back. All right, so we can also, which is kind of cool, I'm going to Control Z back. I have to make sure that I Control Z back far enough that I do not have the extrude on. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to refine this. I'm going to double click on this edge. So I'm going to right click, go to edge mode, and double click on this. That creates a ring. I'm going to hit the R key for scale. R for scale. So I'm going to scale that up, or you can just hit scale this tool right here on the side, on the left hand side, and I'm going to scale that up like that. I'm going to right click over and go to face mode. Okay, and I'm just going to click off because I'm going to start this new. Hit the Q key for selection mode. I'm going to start, and it's going to hit every other one. Okay, all the way around. I know this is kind of time consuming, but you get the idea. And this time it came out correctly. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now that all those are selected, I'm going to make sure I don't have anything selected around. So I'm rotating around the object, just make sure nothing else is selected, because that can cause some problems. Okay, and then I'm going to do Control E, okay, which is the same as clicking on the extrude in the toolkit. So now I'm going to move that up, and there we've got our spire. Okay, so I'm just kind of look at the reference, and that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to click off, and we've got our first model done. Hit the Q key to get out of extrude. Okay, and there's our first one. There we go. Congratulations, you were extruded. You did the extrude, which is a first time, so just take your time, and we're going to go to File, Save Scene As, and set this up to 3. Start 0, 3. So you can see that I save a lot. So that's what you need to get used to doing, saving a lot. Okay. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.